Brown sends you our half presentation for the morning, and then we're going to send you guys back to class, and the rest of us are going to, interestingly enough, take some personal nutrition. So one of the things that we do on a weekly basis in our governor's school class is that we practice presenting. So what you guys see here is actually a result of some different things that we do. One of their favorite things, not really being sarcastic when I say this, is that we start off with tongue twisters, and they pick some random tongue twisters out of the hat, and they have to practice those things. One of the things that we also did, which was really actually kind of a fun thing for them to do, is I went through and picked out random pictures from Google and would throw them into the LCHS breaking news. And they would come up to the front, and we'd hit the button, and then this picture would show up behind them, and they'd have about 30 seconds to maybe a full minute where they have to actually act like a news reporter and report on whatever it was that was going on behind them. They had to kind of come up with that on the fly. So some of them, we have some budding comedians. Some need to stick to their day jobs and be a little more serious. But I'd like to introduce Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown's going to give his presentation on food nutrition.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Brown, and today I'm going to be presenting my project on food security programs and their effect on nutrition. Now, the clicker doesn't seem to be working. Okay. Having some tech issues.
That's all right.
I apologize for that.
No worries.
So, my inspiration for this project was I've been taking culinary classes here at the high school and through PVCC. And after this semester, I'll have taken 5 years of culinary arts here at the high school. And so here you have a picture of me at a competition that I competed in just 2.5 weeks ago down in Blacksburg. And so I wanted to connect my project somehow to food and giving back to the community. And my original idea was to have a sort of soup kitchen on a weekend here at the beginning of the year after holidays, because that's generally a time when food banks and food pantries are empty, but due to various regulations and restrictions regarding that sort of thing, I wasn't able to. So instead, I decided to host a food drive here at the high school and connect a scholarship to that to help an underprivileged student who has shown that they are able to give back to their community in various ways. So here you have a picture of me in front of the truck for the LC Resource Council, headed by Mr. Runnett, and that's where all the food from my food drive was donated to. So for the nutrition aspect in the research paper, I focused on food security programs, which are programs that provide food to families and people in need at both the national level and at the small community level. But the larger focus was on the food stamp program itself, because it's the largest national food security program in America. And surprisingly enough, there is a positive correlation between the food stamp program and obesity, which is a very strange thing to think of about people who don't have access to food necessarily. So the process that this stems from is called the food security, or the food stamp cycle, which is basically where in periods of relative abundance and scarcity, people have the body reacts in a way that builds up excess fat because they don't have any food, so the body kicks into basically survival mode and kicks on as much fat as they can when they have food. And this is due to the way that the food stamp program gives out their benefits. Their benefits are all given at one time at the beginning of the month, so they have a tendency to buy all their food at one time, and by the end of the month, they're only receiving roughly 70% of the food that is recommended for a daily allowance of a diet. And here in this diagram here, you can see they have a resource for adequate food, which is food security, and when they have this, they are eating as much as they can, pretty much. And then at the end of the month, they have food insecurity, which leads back to the food stamp cycle. And some of the coping strategies that can be brought into this are just food choices in general. Different regulations need to be brought into effect in the food stamp program to allow for healthier choices, because right now there aren't any restrictions or anything on what can be bought with food stamps. So a lot of it's going towards unhealthy and empty caloric content foods such as sodas and junk foods rather than healthier options. And to bring a parallel into this, there's the WIC program, which is another government federal organization to provide food. And they have benefits given out weekly, and they have specific packages that are given to families so that they are obtaining the right nutritional values and things of that nature, and so that they maintain a healthy diet. And so that shows that it's not necessarily just the difficulties of running a food security program at this level, but it's rather just the way that the food stamp organization is set up in and of itself. Now moving on to my actual internship itself, this is Mr. Brian Wilson, who is the operations manager of a local food pantry called Loaves and Fishes, which is in Charlottesville. And he had 30 years of experience managing over 200 employees at a General Electric facility in Charlottesville. And then when he retired, he moved on to he was looking for something to do basically, so he decided to give back to the community through Loaves and Fishes. And in my internship, basically the idea was to go into a food pantry and see what it was ran like and to see where my food would be going specifically, because I just wanted like an inside view of exactly what I would be doing through my my food drive and how I would be helping these people. So the major duties that I had were stocking the shelves or actually interacting with clients themselves and taking them through the pantry. And the way the pantry worked were there were two sections. There was one section with USDA provided food, which is provided by the government. And like I said earlier, similar to WIC, it has very strict regulations on what kind of food they can provide. And then the other section was the actual pantry food, which was stuff that was donated or bought by the pantry itself. And that's sort of what I was looking at, because in my research, I found that a lot of local food security organizations, such as pantries and things of that nature, a lot of the food that they're providing isn't necessarily healthy or things of that nature. And it leaves, again, more choice to the client's end rather than regulating it in a way that provides them with healthy food. My community service mentor, which was for the food drive and scholarship, was Chef Lincoln Marquis here at the high school. And I chose him as my mentor because he has a lot of connections in with the school. He understands the kinds of foods and things that are necessary, and he had a connection to Mr. Runnett, who was the leader of the food pantry that I ended up donating my food to. So for my food drive, I organized it through the administration at the school and put up announcements on the morning and afternoon announcements, as well as announcements around the school. And I actually went out to individual teachers after school on various days to actually garner support for my food drive, because I feel like here at the school especially, you need to have a personal impact on these people and show that you're doing it rather than just a nameless organization for them to give food. Because we had a food drive last semester that only had 6 items donated. And with my food drive, we ended up collecting over 250 pounds worth of food. And so then this is the winning class, by the way, and to further incentivize people to bring in food, we had the reward for the class that brought in the most food was a whole entire meal prepared by Louisa Culinary to sort of give back to the students for giving back to their community. And then the other part of my project was the scholarship that I mentioned earlier, and that was done outside of school in the Tall Pines community here in Louisa, and we raised over $800 to go towards a student in need of financial aid to go to college. My biggest personal impact by far for this project was just seeing the kind of people that went through the food pantry, because it was the kind of people you would never necessarily expect to need food security or need to go to a food pantry. Like, a lot of them were just people that looked like me or you. If you passed them on the street, you would have no idea that they have this kind of issue in their lives, and it kind of put everything into perspective for me. And then I also learned, like I said, a lot of networking skills and things of that nature, working with the administration, and especially working out and finding a mentor, because I sent out calls and emails to, I believe, 6 different food pantries, only heard back from 2. And one of them just simply didn't answer my phone calls after they said they would call me back the next week. And it was interesting because these are the same lines that people that are going and calling to ask questions about or concerning getting food from the pantry, these are the same lines. So it's amazing to see that there's so little support from their end towards people who are seeking out food and things of that nature. For my future plans, I'm probably either going to be attending the University of Washington and Lee or Virginia Tech and studying computer science. So while my project doesn't necessarily connect with what I want to do later in life, both of these schools do have large programs like food pantries and things such as that I do plan on taking part in my college years through work study and other programs. I'd like to especially thank Mr. Brian Wilson and Chef Marquis, who were both of my mentors. And again, I have to thank Ms. Jackowicz. Everyone has done it, but it really is just amazing the amount of work that she puts in for us and just the amount of support that she gives us throughout this project. Does anyone have any questions? Sir.
In your research, did you find that if there are regulations put on the food that can be bought with food stamps, would that increase the cost as opposed to what it costs now with allowing the junk food?
There have been several studies done that would say that it would increase the cost, but not in a significant way. It would be several dollars per person, which obviously does add up over the millions that are enrolled in the program, but in the big scheme of things, I think it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Has there been any consideration in offering like a class, like an educational class for those who do qualify for WIC or food stamps to encourage them to, to make the better choices and, to avoid, I never would have paired the obesity and I never would have thought that a million years, but it's interesting. But have they considered doing a class?
Yes, sir. And that was actually a part of my research paper as well that I didn't necessarily touch on. A lot of the small-scale food security programs, such as Loaves and Fishes, where I interned at, do have like a day set apart for the week where all their clients can come in and learn how to cook meals with healthier food items and things of that nature and actually prepare their own foods. And one study that I had said that being educated on nutritional content and things of that nature actually led to them being more food secure because they were able to buy food items that they could make their own meal with in a cheaper manner than buying it pre-prepared already. This was actually a question I asked my mentor during my professional interview that I had with him, was what sort of donation works the best for them. And he said both types of donation are extremely important, but it's just pretty much whatever's easiest because they can take whatever they can get. And if you're taking in food, the kinds of food that are most important are canned foods, things like peanut butter, pastas, and things of that nature, just basically non-perishables first. Although it's very important to have fresh produce and things of that nature as well, so they can have a varied diet. Yes, ma'am.
You actually answered one of my questions, which was, when we think of food drives, we think so often of canned food, which is a little bit easier. But of course, research shows that, every diet you need to have lots of fresh vegetables and fruits and all that. How much of that did you see, Mickey, in the food pantries that you worked in?
Like the amount of fresh food versus canned food.
I'm sure that was hard to get.
It was actually kind of shocking to me because they did have a large portion that was fairly fresh because they had partnerships with businesses such as the local Food Lion and Wegmans that was just built in Charlottesville, where they have a lot of fresh produce brought in. It's like just past the sell-by date and things of that nature. So they had stuff like that and fresh bakery bread and things like that. So they actually did have quite a large source of that. I would say it's probably about 30% fresh to 70% canned and things of that nature.
Great.
Did you find that regulations sort of hinder what can be done at food pantries?
While they do hinder them, like I said before, I think it's in the better interest for the clients to have that sort of regulation. But it was actually, and this was the same study that I said that found that it was beneficial to have the food instruction, was that when they had these regulations in place, it actually helped to further how much food they were getting, and it wasn't as difficult as one might think to narrow down the sort of foods that they can get from less healthy options to healthier options.
sorry to keep asking questions here. First comment, great presentation again. And I really love the fact, Nikki, that you're such a testament to, we all know that you're a really, really strong academic student. But the fact that you paired that with the culinary for 5 years, I didn't know that you've done that. And I want to applaud you for that. That's really awesome. I know that you have a high ranking in the class academically. So that's a great testament to marrying those two things that you enjoy. And another question, when did you first start to have a love of cooking?
It actually, well, of course, it stemmed from the love of food that I'm sure like a lot of us have. But honestly, like it sounds kind of bad, but from the school we're required to have the extracurricular credits. And so I decided to take something that I knew would help me later on in life and that I would do every day. So I decided to take cooking, and it's just something I've grown to love as I've done it.
Yeah. I like the fact that the reward was a meal prepared by culinary. That was a neat idea to do that instead of just like pizza, you know, from the Domino's or something. Cool idea.
Does anyone else have any questions?